everyone, it's Alice, and today let's talk about some dystopian books. So the other day we had like a weirdly misty day here, and I woke up and everything just felt very mysterious and a little eerie, and for some reason it really made me want to pick up a dystopian book, and I have quite a few unread on my shelves, so I put together a little TBR. I will admit I didn't actually start a book on that day because I couldn't decide what I wanted to read, so I figured I would show these books to you and you could help me pick my next dystopian read. It was also super handy for me to find these books on my shelves because I recently reorganized my shelves, so now all of them are in the same place, and it was so much easier. So my new system actually works. I didn't manage to pick what to read, but at least all of the books were in the same place instead of all over the place. I love a good dystopian book though, and I have quite a variety of them. So if you've read any of these and you've loved them, let me know. Or if you just want to see a review of one of them, let me know about that as well. I really need to pick up more dystopian books. I don't think I've read a lot of them this year. I can't think of any, but then I do forget things very quickly, so maybe I have read a couple. But I have quite a few I want to read, and I really should just focus on them. I just get distracted. Let's get into the books though, starting with the book I've actually wanted to read for quite some time. It's The Road by Cormac and McCarthy. And I remember when this came out, and there was a lot of talk about it when it came out and also in the years after. Like, a lot of people talked about this book and it seemed like a lot of people loved it. And I still haven't read it. I really want to, and I wonder if it's as impactful now as it was then. The story is about a father and a son who are walking through a post-apocalyptic America. Everything is ravaged and desolate. It's cold. The sky is dark, and I think they're heading for the coast just because they need to go somewhere. I think maybe there's something there. I don't quite know, but I don't think they meet any other people. I don't know if there's any other people. But I think the setup of that sounds really nice. It sounds nice to have, well, nice, interesting to have like a father-son relationship at the core of this. I think it could be really interesting. It also sounds super desolate, so maybe it'll be really sad. I feel like maybe it'll be a little sort of philosophical. I'm not quite sure. I do think I know how this ends. I feel like I've heard or read somewhere about what happens, but I can't remember if it's this book or not. But either way, I think it will be an interesting book to read, and it's also just one of those books that I want to read because I've wanted to read it for so long. Secondly, we have a book that came out not too long ago. It's Vanishing World by Sayaka Murata, and this sounds a little crazy. It's set in a version of Japan where sex between married couples is considered really taboo. I think it's as taboo as incest. They're like, we're a family, of course we're not gonna sleep with each other. And so all like babies are made through artificial insemination, and that already sounds pretty different. And then our character grows up in this world, and I think she takes it a step further when she moves to this experimental town where like everyone is considered everyone's mother. So all of the children, like all of the adults, are all mothers. And I think the men can have babies through artificial wombs. There's a lot going on in here, and I think it's gonna be pretty wild. I really like this author though. She's not for everyone, but I have really liked a lot of what I've read from her. I've read Convenience Store Woman, loved it. I read Earthlings, loved it. I've read one of her short story collections, which I can't remember the name of. I read it this year. Life Ceremony. I've read that and I really liked some of the stories. And I like how this author sort of turns things on its head. Like, things that we think are really abnormal become normal, and then if you don't fit into that new normal, it's very interesting. It's all about societal expectations and fitting into those expectations and individuality, and her books always makes me think. They usually also really surprise me. So yeah, I think this is gonna be the wildest one that I've read by her, but I'm super excited about it because Her books always makes me think, and they always stick with me for a really long time. Then we have a classic that I've wanted to read for a while. It's Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, which some people love, some people hate, but it's one of those books that I have wanted to read for a while, and I just want to read it in part to have read it, because it's one of those books that I want to read in order to understand what people are talking about when they talk about this book. I am also interested in it, and I usually don't read classics just to read them, but it's one of those books that it comes up every once in a while and I don't understand what people are talking about, and I would like to. I also get the sense that a lot of people who hate this book had to read it for school and that's why they hate it. But I have never read this. I didn't read it for school. We didn't read most books, like English books, in school. We were stuck reading Norwegian classics, and boy, do I hate some of those. So I totally get it. I think that a lot of the classics that I read in school I would like more now as an adult, but some of them, we read some plays and stuff that I just absolutely hated. It's sad that school can ruin books sometimes, but they just do. Anyways, the story in here is about a fireman whose job it is to destroy illegal commodities, including books, and the houses where illegal books are kept. And so I think he actually, when I say fireman, he burns these things, I'm guessing. And he's just going about his day. He's living in the society. He doesn't know anything else, so he does his job. And I think a new neighbor moves into the neighborhood where he lives and starts sort of challenging him on what he's doing and tells him about what life was like before, and that sort of changes everything for him. I think it sounds really interesting, and there is something, compelling about a book about burning books. Next, we have this book by P.D. James. It's The Children of Men, and I've only ever read short stories from this author, so I already know that I like the writing, and I think this is going to be very interesting. The premise sounds fascinating. This is set in a world where there are no more children because the human race has become infertile, and when we see this story, we're seeing the last generation of adults. And obviously there's no future for humankind because you can't reproduce. And I think our main character is obviously an adult, and he's very disillusioned and apathetic, which is understandable because can you imagine? And I think he comes into contact with some people who maybe have a solution for the future, and he becomes a sort of hero of this movement or revolution. I don't really know. But the whole setup just sounds very interesting. I do know that there is a movie adaptation of this, but I've never seen it, so I'm kind of going into this blind. And I think it will be interesting to read this from this author, because this author mostly wrote mystery novels, and everything I've read is mystery related. So it's cool that she wrote this as well. It will be interesting to see. I can't remember when this book came out. Is it a classic at this point? It came out in 93. So, kind of, maybe. 92? Yeah. It's quite old, so we'll see how it goes. I like that I'm saying that this book is old as if I'm not older than this book. Moving on, we have this little slip of a book. This is Termush by Sven Holm. And this is set in a post-apocalyptic 1967. I think this came out in the 60s, actually, so it's a classic at this point. I'm not as old as this book, but the story is about this resort that it's set up for wealthy people and preppers, I guess, who booked a place in this resort before what is referred to as the disaster, which I'm guessing is the end of the world. In this resort, there's exclusive radiation shelters, there's loads of provisions, there's ambient music, and it seems like it's a great place to be. And outside, radioactive dust is falling and everything is dying, so it's better to be inside of this resort, obviously. And I think things don't go very well. In the beginning, everything seems nice, but then eventually management starts getting rid of disruptive guests and starts censoring news, and things are getting a little bit weird. And it sounds really good. I wonder how we're gonna do this whole story in such a short amount of time, but I'm very excited to see it. And I really like the setup of it. And yeah, I like the idea of sort of censorship, and I think it's gonna be really good. It's also a translated book, which is cool. I've never heard about this book before I got it though. So yeah, it will be interesting. Then we have another Japanese author where I've already read several books by this author. It's Under the Eye of the Big Bird by Hiromi Kawakami. And this author actually wrote one of my favorite books, which is Strange Weather in Tokyo. And this sounds very different than that, but it sounds really good. It's set in a world where humans are almost extinct, and they live in these small tribes around the world, and they're all watched over by something that is referred to as mothers. And it seems like all like children that are being born are made artificially, and they're made by sort of interbreeding or like doing something with like other animals and also maybe aliens. I'm not quite sure, but I think the survival of the human species sort of depends on that, and it sounds wild. I think the book is set up as like interconnected stories, so that'll be interesting, and we get to see like different facets of this world. It looks like it's sort of like short stories. And I just think it will be very interesting to see. I'm excited to read something else from this author, even though this is very different. And it seems like the kind of book that will really make you think. Next, we have a book that I've had on my TBR for ages. It's Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood. And I have this whole trilogy, so I really need to get on this. And I just bought the whole trilogy because I figured I would really like this. And I think I will. The story follows a boy who I think is called Snowman, and he may be the last human left on Earth, and he is like grieving the loss of his best friend and the one that they both loved, or something like that. I think our main character ends up going on some sort of journey, and he travels through this desolate world, and nature is like taking over again. It's taking over cities, and I don't quite remember why the world ended in this book. I feel like it has something to do with like genetic engineering or something like that. And it went horribly wrong, obviously, if he's like the last person left. I really like Margaret Atwood though. She's one of those authors that I say that I really like, but I actually haven't read that many of her books. But what I've read, I've really liked. So I really should make my way through all of her books. And I do have these. So should get on it. Then we have an epistolary novel. It's Ella Minnow P by Mark Dunn. And this, I think, is set on a small island outside of North Carolina where our main character grows up, and the island is being taken over by totalitarian rule by the island's council. And I think the council starts banning different like letters of the alphabet or something. I think they're basing the banning of certain letters on this poem that they have, and it's like on a wall, and the letters start falling down, and if they fall down, the council bans the letter, like the use of the letter for everyone, which sounds crazy, but then totalitarian rule is a little crazy. And I think what's going to make this so interesting is that through these letters, when the alphabetical letters are banned, it's stopped, like, the book also stops using them, which I think is going to be like a language roller coaster. I have no idea how they're going to be able to do that, but it sounds very interesting and like a cool way to write a book. I think maybe this is the thing where they start banning letters. I'm also really excited to read this because I know several of you have read this and loved it, and that makes me feel like maybe I will love it too. I feel like maybe I got this book actually from a recommendation from one of you or several of you. I can't remember. I get a lot of recommendations, but yeah, excited to read this. Moving on, we have another translated book. It's Tower by Bae Myung-Hoon. And this is also interconnected stories, all set in this skyscraper called Beanstalk, which is a sovereign nation. And it has, I think, like 670 floors or something, which sounds a little bit overwhelming. It's a hyper modern building though, and through these stories we get to see different like parts of it. And it says on the inside here that there is a group of researchers who have to tell their boss that a major power broker is a dog, which I don't know how that works. A woman uses the internet to rescue a downed fighter pilot, and someone trains a gentle elephant to break up protests. I don't know how that works either, but it sounds interesting. They have an elephant in this building? Sounds very intriguing. And I do like the idea of getting different perspectives from like different people. So I think this interconnected story thing is really gonna work. And really need to read this. It's translated from Korean as well, which is cool. Now, the last 3 books that I have are all in series that I'm currently reading. The first one is Adulthood Rites by Octavia E. Butler. And this is dystopian, but it definitely leans maybe more into like science fiction. But the first book in this trilogy is called Dawn, and in that book, the human race has been saved by these aliens who have taken them aboard their ship and kept them like asleep for hundreds and hundreds of years while they've been fixing Earth. And then they wake someone up and tell them like, we've fixed Earth, we can send you back, but there is a price to pay, which is you have to breed with us because that's how the alien species survives. And it's a lot. When I tell you that the first book disturbed me, like every once in a while I think about that book and I'm like, ugh, it still makes me, it's so creepy. And like the aliens are, they're so, ooh, it's terrible. It was so good though. It's very, very interesting. And the first book ended on quite the note. So I'm very excited to see what happens in here. And based on what happened in the first book, I'm guessing this is sort of like dystopian in a way. And we're trying to set up a new society maybe. I don't know. I'm both excited and like scared to read this book because the first one really, like, I had to take breaks from it because I thought it was so just creepy and a little nasty. And yeah, but I really need to get on with this, and I need to read this before I totally forget the first book, which does happen to me sometimes. I guess I'm not really gonna forget that first book because it was so creepy, and I read it I think a few years ago now, and I still remember a lot of it. But yeah, there's this, and then there's a third book, and I really just, I need to read it. Then we have this one. This is the book of Flora by Meg Ellison, and this is the third book in the Road to Nowhere trilogy. The first book is The Book of the Unnamed Midwife, which is one of those books that I, like, if anyone ever asks me for an underrated book, that's the book that I mention because it's so good and I feel like more people should read it. The first book is set in a world where a fever has killed off most people, and it's killed off more women and children than men, and so there are very few women left and almost no children, and the majority of the people who are left are men. And so you can imagine how women are treated, and the main character in the first book is maybe the last midwife left on Earth. In that first book though, the main character is writing a diary of her experiences. And then in the second book, we're set like further in the future, and the people in that future are studying this diary that she wrote. And we see like how things have gone since then. I didn't love the second book, but I'm excited to read this and sort of finish the trilogy. I think that the first book is definitely the strongest, and it's sort of a little unconventional kind of dystopian book, but I'm excited to see this as well. I think this is set even further into the future, and I think we're in like an all-female city or something. I don't know if we're in it or if we're trying to make it to it, but it sounds interesting, and I do like the world that is created in, well, I don't like it, but it's interesting to read about the world that's created in these books. So yeah, it'll be interesting to read, and I do really like this author's writing. Lastly, we have a Norwegian book, actually, which has been translated from Danish. It's Utregning av Romfang by Solvej Balle, and these books are all named the same, actually. It's just like the title 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. I don't remember how many books are out, but this has also recently actually been translated into English, and it's called something like On the Calculation of Volume or something like that. And I think the first 3 books have been translated. I'm not quite sure. But the first book tells the story of this woman who gets stuck in a time loop. She relives the 18th of November again and again and again. And in the first book, we follow her living that same day for about a year. I have no idea what's going to happen in this book, but the first book ends on the main character doing something, so I'm just guessing we're following up from that, and I'm just interested to see where the story is gonna take us. I would say that, like, the first book, it's one of those books that I wouldn't necessarily recommend widely because I think that the writing style and, like, the style of the book is not for everyone, but I really liked it. And I'm very curious as to where we're gonna go in this story, especially because this series has, I think, 5 books out already, 4 or 5, and there are gonna be 7 in total. And I'm like, what are we gonna do for all of that time? I don't know, but I'm intrigued. I do also really like books that just deal with time. I think it can be a really interesting element in books when it's sort of played with. I guess I don't actually know if this is categorized as dystopian now that I'm talking about it, but it feels very dystopian for the main character to be stuck in what she's stuck in. So it's science fiction, at least. I don't know. But I'm excited to read this and then see the other books as well. I need to get my hands on the others. Maybe I should actually read this before I get any more books. But yeah, I think it will be interesting to read. And I do really like that it's translated from Danish because I'm really bad at reading like Scandinavian books, and I really should read more of them. That was the last book in my stack though. Like I mentioned, if you've read any of these and loved them, tell me and maybe it will like spur me to read it next. And then also, if you have any dystopian books in your TBR that you're really excited about, I would love to hear about it. That was kind of it for today. As always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!